Well, good afternoon. It was incredibly amazing just to be back here, Linux Foundation. I used to attend those events every year, and then I joined Google, and I haven't attended for 3 years, so I miss the folks here and miss the events. It's great to see some of the folks that I used to work with before. I thought it's pointless to talk about AI. It's best to talk about Gen AI, because AI is not new in telco. Sometimes we debate that, but I think pretty much every telco worldwide, tier 1, tier 2, do apply and employ AI today in some shape or form. I think what's really exciting, and I think most of you who have adopted AI in your business, you know very well the amount of effort required to customize one application for one particular problem. Typically it requires tens of people, tens of engineers, if not more. 6 months to a year is typical, if not more. It's a lot of investment, both CapEx, OpEx, experience, partners, to build one single application and tune one single application and keep it refreshed over time. What's really exciting, as all of you know, is that we came with this Gen AI. And this is really what's exciting about that. It's one step towards artificial general intelligence, which is really what the Holy Grail problem is, that a lot of us have been after for decades. And what Gen AI, which is one step towards that, really helps us to do is to recreate systems that are capable of performing more than one task at any given time. And Gen AI specifically, as most of you know, are able to do summarization, translation, information retrieval, among many other things that we basically use them today. For AI, I don't want to miss AI at all, but if you look at the past decade, I just took a few examples. In my previous job, I worked at AT&T, and we at AT&T, along with many, many tier 1, 2 customer telcos, we've deployed a large number of AI applications. There are today already at scale. Contact centers is the obvious one. Pretty much every contact center worldwide now has some form of AI, whether it is for natural language understanding of the query, all the way to routing, or doing basically agent assist. Big success. If there's one big success of AI in telco, it's certainly been in contact centers. The business model is very clear. Second one is network operation. There are a large number of deployments where AI is being used for monitoring, for alarms, for anomaly detections, and those are really helping us to find the very special tickets or very special failures among the millions of failures that basically happen every day. Energy consumption. Again, what's special, by the way, about all of these examples, there's a clear business case. That's what makes it exciting, interesting, and valuable. Energy consumption is very clear. One of the largest spend for telcos today, and has been, is energy, whether it's for network core or for cell sites, specifically on the RAN. So being able to conserve energy in the RAN network by sending cell sites to sleep is a huge thing. And figuring out when do you send them to sleep and what configuration you use, that AI capability has certainly have paid off dividends for many telcos. Planning for converged wireless wireline network. Before I left, we used to pretty much design an entire green field when we want to expand fiber, pretty much using AI. That helps us to try to drive and optimize criteria like, you know, I have $1 billion to spend. I want to drive X number of, I want to pass X number of houses. Find me the best path based on what kind of coverage I want to get, etc. And the last one here is cell site configurations. As new cell sites go up, configuring those cell sites, activating those cell sites is not a trivial thing. And optimizing those cell sites is not a trivial thing. Again, one big success story from what the industry, what all of you guys have done over the past decade plus. These are successful stories of AI. Now come Gen AI. I borrowed this from Bloomberg. This is data. There are many data like this, as most of you know. This is data across all verticals. It is not telco or networking specifically. Predicted GenAI revenue to overpass $1 trillion by 2030. Significant. 10% of that, 10% of IT investment by then will come from Gen AI. And this is a very serious business, obviously, and it's not unusual that every talk, in every conference, in every event, for every vertical is now really about understanding this area, capturing the opportunities, and being able to try to drive the return on the investment. For what we do in the networking and the telco business, there are a number of opportunities we have already figured out, and there are a large number of telcos today are experimenting with those and deploying those in their field. I'm not going to go through every one of those because I'd like this to be interactive, but clearly there are a lot of opportunities as simple as when you have an incident in your network, being able to write a post-mortem in a matter of few minutes is now is something that's easily done with generative AI. Something that either telcos initially they would never write a post-mortem, or it really requires months to write a post-mortem and understand the root cause. It's a huge thing. Small, but it's a huge thing for these kind of technologies. All the way to employee productivity. Being able, there are many telcos who have now built these ask systems where they've taken all their data and put their data and information together into one system that allows them to find data, normalize data, answer questions about data, integrate data, etc. Where we're going with this is that Gen AI, several years ago, we used to think about distributed cloud in such a way that we think intelligence is going to be put in certain ways where in the core, you'll have very large, big tasks like training models, putting all your data there. And at the edge, we will do something very simple. It may be that we will do anomaly detection or alarm detection, etc. That is completely changing, even with Gen AI. What we are seeing is that now Gen AI is starting to be deployed anywhere. And we're not talking about small models. We're talking models of the size of 13 billion and 70 billion parameters, etc. So this concept of you just do it, you do something at the edge, but all the heavy lifting is done in the core, it's actually not the case anymore. Now we have intelligence everywhere. And what's really governing this, apart from what we used to believe latency was a big factor of that, and latency is a factor. There's no doubt. You do not want to, latency at the edge is obviously going to be much shorter than basically being in the core. What's governing where the intelligence is in that distributed fashion is really about data, data ownership, data privacy, data security, data compliance, cost. Those are really the parameters that's driving where the intelligence resides. But the ability to run these sophisticated Gen AI models, they're able to run anywhere in here. It's not anything special about basically the core. So I wanted to, Arpit asked me to have a dialogue, and I wanted to pause a bunch of questions as to where we are all in this Gen AI journey, and what are some of the successes, challenges, and failures as well. So I want to start with pulling some feedback from what are the success use cases that you have had in your own business using Gen AI. Who's the brave soul who will kick this off?
And Mazin, you're distinguishing AI from Gen AI, right?
I honestly believe that we have made a tremendous breakthrough in AI for over a decade. And there are still a lot of opportunities in AI. And I would like to focus here on the Gen AI opportunities, because that is an area that is, on one hand, is a big buzz. On the other hand, there are some very serious money and saving and business models that are being developed. And I think being able to understand the use cases and the challenges is really very important.
Any brave person who has figured out Gen AI, go for it, Sebastian.
Mazin, so I'd like to play the icebreaker for you today.
Please, thank you so much.
So Sebastian from Deutsche Telekom. So what has worked pretty well for us is we've put all the manuals and specifications for our fiber rollout into one Gen AI system. And the use case is actually when the field technician who actually is building the FTTH network is on site and has questions. Then in former times, they were calling a back-end engineer as well. And then he was skimming through all the manuals, and that took, I don't know, I think it was 20 minutes. And with the help of AI, we brought it down to 1 to 2 minutes. So really, Gen AI finds the solution in the, we are from Germany, so we have a lot of documents, finds it much, much quicker than the actually agent was able to do.
That is an incredible use case, and it just fit for these kind of technologies. I've also heard people who are taking RFPs, large RFPs, and doing exactly what you're doing, an effort that usually takes experts weeks of time just to read through an RFP and being able to do that. So this is great. Do you mind if you can just share what was the challenge in doing something like that? Obviously, there are a lot of challenges in terms of factuality. Are you giving the technicians the right information? Do they trust that information? How are you managing that?
I think that was not the problem, but it took us, I think, 3 attempts to make it work. I cannot, I do not have enough information about why 1 and 2 were failing, but obviously being persistent and learning from the failures was one of the factors to success. So don't expect that the first model is already delivering the best answers. It was, in our case, it was the third one.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. It's an amazing use case. Do you want to share another use case?
Not a use case, but a challenge, more like. So one of the challenges we're finding, and I'm from Ericsson, by the way, it's that we as an industry do not have a common understanding of what are the legal risks with deploying Gen AI in sort of in a general sense. And that will develop over time, right? But unless we have like the common understanding of what the risks actually are, because whenever you talk to someone, they have a different understanding of the risk. So unless we can harmonize that, it's going to be very hard to sort of come to an acceptable risk level in the industry. Just as a simple example, it's we have no sort of common understanding of how do we do open source license compliance when we involve Gen AI. What is good enough? What is sort of an acceptable level? What is the industry expecting, right? So I think that's a challenge, and I think that's probably a challenge for everyone, that we're not even talking the same language sometimes on these things. We're trying to understand the risks, right? But we don't have a common understanding or a common baseline on that. So if we can get there, I think that is one of the things that would really help Gen AI deployment. We don't have to have the solutions for the risks, but at least if we can have a common understanding of what the risks are.
I'm 100% with you. This is an area that remains an open area for, even in the research community, they're trying to understand how do you quantify the level of risk. I think the question is, did we understand the level of risk when we were deploying AI, traditional AI, in networks and customer care? I think this area remains a challenge, not just for Gen AI, but also for AI as well. I don't know if you agree with that, but it is an area that remains a gap.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Anything else you want to share about this question? Otherwise, we'll go to the next one. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Ruben with Dish. So 2 aspects. I will talk about AI first, and then we'll get to Gen AI as well. So for us, when we were deploying the complete ORAN ecosystem, automation was such a key. I mean, unlike big operators, we are a very small workforce. So AI, we actually deployed that at that time. And for us, it was not which side or which market needs to go first. It was AI that was actually determining that for us. It actually, yes, and that's the reason we were able to go ahead and actually, deploy at the pace which we were able to. So that's one use case. And within that, I mean, there are other things in terms of just looking at the different workflows we actually have to implement, but also data was such a key. So in terms of, is the ecosystem or the site ready for the next workload? It was determined by the AI itself. When it comes to Gen AI, we're not too far into that, but we have now gathered into, as we are doing release management, we're using Gen AI to go ahead and actually look at the new parameters that are being introduced into the ecosystem and actually trying to do the correlation and actually build the data catalog for that. That's how we're using Gen AI.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. I love your both AI and Gen AI use cases. So it sounds like the AI was more of a time to market. It's velocity and speed. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. Any other? Let's go to the next question. Do you want to? Please go ahead. Saba, right?
Yes, Subha. It's a question, not a successful use case example. So have you used or experienced Gen AI models in operational sort of workloads? For instance, in conventional autonomous systems, you have AI based on time series data that you can then use to predict congestion. Have you encountered any leap in terms of implementations with Gen AI?
So we're still trying to figure out how Gen AI can process real-time analytics data. So if you're talking about network logs that that are streamlined around the clock, the ability to take those network logs and being able to process those network logs, and for Gen AI to do something, find anomalies in real time, we're not there, okay? Where we are at, and have been, is the ability to take network documents, network pamphlets, network information, and being able to apply things like RAG systems, retrieval augmented systems, that allow us to process this data in seconds and being able to tell us what the next action is and what we should basically do about this. But the idea of doing streaming, we're not there. In terms of, so that's where we are today. We are working with a couple of telcos who have exactly that issue of how do we take operational data and being able to expedite time to market of how quickly we can extract intelligence. There are ways of how we are experimenting it, but I can't really tell you today that it's a well understood, like a RAG system is now very well understood in Gen AI. This is still an open area. Happy to talk to you about that, how we are doing it, how we are experimenting with this. Okay, what challenges are you facing in using Gen AI today? There are many, many challenges, but I would love to hear, let's start first, it's expensive. It can't be that cheap. Hardware is very expensive. I'm just wondering, what are the challenges that you guys are facing? How about culture? Are the employees willing to move very quickly to this field? Has that been a challenge? Legal issues are a big issue, which is what absolutely. Legal issues is a big issue. And also another issue is the data itself. Where is the data? Okay? One of the things I was mentioning earlier, one of the prime reasons why a number of our customers are looking for Gen AI for cloud edge is data privacy, compliance, and ownership of that data. They want to make sure, in fact, even an air-gapped approach where there is not even any connection to the internet. So there are a lot of these challenges. Some of these challenges are workable, like you can have an air-gapped cloud where it has Gen AI capability, and you are now guaranteeing that you have everything on-prem, it's your data privacy, your security, everything is secured for you. But there are certain things that are still being worked out. Any other challenges that you guys are experiencing in your business for using Gen AI?
I think quantifying risk was the one that we already talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we need telco LLMs? So this is the first thing that jumped to everyone's mind is there are a lot of open source LLMs. There are a number of hyperscalers and other startups who are building their own LLMs. I think you guys know we have a large number of LLMs out there. Many of them are open source. Hugging Face has many of those. The question is that, do we really need to build a telco LLM? Very specialized. Knowing very well, by the way, building an LLM is an exercise that costs in the millions of dollars. It's not a trivial thing just to build one LLM. So I'm just wondering whether anyone has an opinion or any experience in building telco LLMs, or that we should be building a telco LLM. Somebody must have an opinion about this. Shout out, you don't even have to stand up.
I think I can't speak for the deployment yet, but we had Dr. Fang from China Mobile do a virtual keynote today.
Yes.
And they're almost reaching level 4 autonomous networks. And they have open data sets.
Yes.
And they've written LLMs, which are telco specific, to train on that data.
Yes, yes.
So I think the largest of the large networks do need some version of domain-specific LLMs.
Yeah.
And I would say that might be true for all the domains that AI gets into, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I would suggest is that before you consider building an LLM for telco, is that try to do, this is like an evolution in terms of, you're building an LLM because you're trying to get better performance. That's really what it comes down to. You're trying to get better factuality, less hallucination, et cetera. The obvious thing to do first is simple prompt tuning. If prompt tuning doesn't work, then you want to consider some of these systems that allow you to do sort of more augmented generation, RAG type of systems, where you can take documents, RFPs, whatever you have, multilingual documents, multimodal documents, and being able to, terabytes of these documents, and being able to instantly being able to take those documents to drive better factuality from these LLMs. That's sort of the second way I would suggest. A lot of application will probably be in that space of the RAG, because it's your own data. You're able to instantly customize any application in any organization and do it very quickly with higher precision than just a general LLM that doesn't know much about your business or about your what your data looks like. The third way is fine-tuning. And in fine-tuning is, now what we're doing is that there are multiple flavors of fine-tuning. And typically most fine-tuning models, they take a very small fraction of the billions of parameters. It could be 2% of the parameters, 3% of the parameters. It could be the weights, it could be the biases, it could be a new set of weights, it could be the existing weights, and they train only those. It's also a faster exercise, and it gets you pretty far close to building an entire model from scratch. Building an entire LLM for telco is the last resort. And so far, I have not seen a reason for doing exactly that. It's an expensive, requires a significant amount of data. So if you come and say, I have 50 terabytes of data, it's nothing. You can actually build a rack system, train a rack system today with 50 terabytes of data without an issue.
So are you saying that every telco will need to build their own rack?
So if you're not getting the performance, even with prompt tuning from an LLM, which you will probably not, because your data is different. So you could be in sales, you could be in supply chain, you could be in legal, you could be in networking, you could be customer care. These are all very different businesses in telco. Telco is a very heterogeneous business, obviously. You can't assume a generalized AI, a Gen AI would work with high precision across all of them. Doesn't know your data. So at least how we're seeing it is that we're building a RAG for each of the businesses. So it's not for each telco, it's for each business to get that high accuracy and least hallucination. That exercise is very trivial. It really is very trivial. It is about taking your data, taking your files, taking whatever information you have. It could be code, and uploading it, and then within minutes, you have a system that is capable of supporting that business with high performance. The magic here, you're actually not changing the model. The LLM is frozen. That's the magic with these racks. This is why within minutes, you're able basically to get a system that works fairly well for your own business. So my point here is that if you ever consider, unless you have very deep pocket and you want to build your own infrastructure and spend millions of dollars trying one LLM, that may not work. And you may have to do many of those over time. I would really suggest you first exhaust the three options that I gave: prompt tuning, RAG, fine-tuning, and the many flavors of fine-tuning, like I mentioned, before you consider building a complete telco LLM. You can get a telco LLM by doing fine-tuning or RAG.
Hey, Mazin, I'm Ling from China Mobile.
Hi, nice meeting you.
Yeah,
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again. This is very interesting, I think, way and approach that you are proposing. However, actually, from our side, we're seeing from this industry is enthusiasm. Perhaps not that reasonable, but everybody is talking about, large language models. And also we hear, one of the major vendors published telecom large language model. And I can tell you the truth that within China, all the telecom are actually, trying to explore what can be leveraged based on telecom large language model. What we have been doing, and you have already been covered a lot, is the biggest challenge is the data sets. We need high quality and huge volume scale data sets. And what we have been doing within our organization is setting up a large group dedicated of dealing with that data. What they have been doing daily is actually collecting all the documents and all the specifications that was internally meant for human, the operation stuff, and now fit into that telecom large language models. And then we are doing like human assistant feedback, reinforcement learning, on the basis of like weeks and months, due to the limit of the computing resources, as you could imagine. And this is a really huge investment.
It is, absolutely is.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so we know that we have to invest a lot, and still we're not sure, how capable it will come out.
Yep.
On the other side, our vendors has been, telling the opposite story. They are telling us that they are building this foundation model, and they will be shifting with us their telecom large language model, and they will be working with us to do fine-tuning, to do the RAGs for a specific application scenario. So the totally opposite approach that you are telling us. So some of the questions that I'm also, having, with them is that who will be providing the large language model if there's no telecom large language model?
So,
So you will be providing, is Google providing a universal large language model that would be, applicable to a variety of different industries, and you will be working with telecoms to deal with that?
So, I'll tell you the situation today, so I'm not going to predict the future. Today, there exists a large number of both open source LLMs and LLMs that hyperscalers and other technology companies provide today.
Yes.
And I'll speak about Google. Google has also been very upfront on offering large, multimodal, multilingual models. We call them Gemini. Our latest release is Gemini, to do exactly that. These are very large models, although we cut them in different sizes depending on the consumption. Those models will get better over time, okay? And they are very, very good today, but they will get better over time. There are issues with legal issues, there are issues with privacy, there are issues with data security, etc. But we're working those issues. The industry is working through those issues, not just us. What I was saying is that not everyone has deep pockets. And before we consider huge investment, this is a very significant investment in this field, one should really consider for their business, for your problem, for your organization, is that how quickly can I build a model with high performance, least hallucination that does exactly what I need, and I want that done in a few minutes, and I don't need people coding, I don't need engineers coding. It should be something that somebody with no coding skills can get that done. And I'm simply saying you could do that with simple approaches that gets you the best ROI before you consider doing the heavy lifting. The nice thing about RAG, as you know very well, unlike traditional AI, for traditional AI to work really well, whether you're using regression, neural nets, whatever you're using, traditional AI require that you have a large number, high-quality, supervised data. It's not just high-quality data, supervised data. You have to have an army of people labeling that data. And that has been always the challenge with traditional AI of building large models. What is the breakthrough in here in Gen AI is that having supervised data is always important to improve the performance, to validate the performance, but the majority of the data that's used in Gen AI are unsupervised. So RAG system today, you can upload completely unsupervised data and being able to train a system without any supervision. What I was suggesting is that before we invest significantly, we should figure out what the metrics we are measuring and how far are we in getting to those metrics with the least amount of investment, okay? That's sort of what I was basically suggesting. And fine-tuning is absolutely a great way to go. And fine-tuning is just tuning few parameters, few percentage of parameters, versus a complete retrain of an LLM from scratch. Happy to talk to you about this in length.
Of course,
Yeah.
but I believe that, all this enthusiasm will settle down when it actually, gets to rolling out in production, because nobody, I think, even the top telcos would afford deploy a number of, or more than a few of, large models in production. And so—
You don't need to.
So, yes,
Yeah.
so that would be the most economic way. But the thing is that whether or not we rely on hyperscalers to do the large language model, foundation models, do we trust them to do that? Or actually the telcos would be ultimately held responsible for those solutions, those would affect our services. In that case, So first of all, we would like to take hold of that technology. We understand where, how it is developed, and what is expected, and we need to ultimately be responsible for its day-to-day operation. So that perhaps, is something that we need to figure out altogether. And then we can, sit down and, say, how we can build this actually, step by step, something like that.
It's a fair point, and absolutely fair point. You're making a very good point.
All right. I think we may, this could take
Sorry,
the whole day.
thank you very much.
It's very
Appreciate
interesting,
everyone's
but
feedback.
it's okay. I think this is the topic of the decade, I think. For the next 10 years, we'll be doing AI, BI, Gen AI. See, there you go. Thank you, Mazin. Thank you.
AGI.
All right, thank you. All right.